ladies and gentlemen, Alex Lafrenière will know which team is going to draft him on Monday. On this episode of the Home Turf, guess what? I'm going to tell you who should get him. Not who I think is going to, but who should. Hint, it's not Edmonton and it's not Pittsburgh. Also coming up today, we're going to be talking about the bubble situations, a little bit more depth in the MLB, and we're going to have a new feature starting this week I think you guys are going to like. That's all coming up on this episode of the Home Turf. What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to get things started right away, and we're going to talk about the ice, the NHL. We're going to talk about the NHL Stanley Cup qualifiers and the round robins. Now, if you're watching it like I have, this has been one of the best playoff hockey games I've seen in my lifetime. A lot of upsets, a lot of great hockey being played back and forth, teams being upset. If you listen to my prediction episode, I'm not right 100%, but that's what I love about the game of hockey, especially this year during a COVID world. It's just impossible to predict things. But little later on, we're going to predict about the best player since since Connor McDavid to play the game. We're going to talk about where he's going to go, but that's going to come up a little later in the show. Now, we're going to talk about what we saw on the first day of competition in the NHL. Now, if you watch the Calgary-Winnipeg series, obviously you'll know that Calgary beat out Winnipeg. In my prediction episode, I predicted Winnipeg in 5. I did not foresee a Mark Scheifele injury or a Patrick Laine injury. And I think that really hurt the Jets, and unfortunately they went early. They could have made a deep run if everyone was healthy. But we're going to talk about that play where Mark Scheifele got injured. Was it accidental or was it intentional? Now, Matthew Tkachuk, you could say, is a dirty player, or you could be like Brian Burke and you could say that Matthew Tkachuk is a solid player. To me, he's a little bit of both. Matthew Tkachuk gets in the dirty areas and he plays the game hard. Unfortunately, that's where he becomes a dirty player, because he takes shots at guys that no other player would take. And unfortunately, it has come to the point where Matthew Tkachuk is going to be hated by all teams. His brother Brady does it on Ottawa, but he does it in a different way, because he's an in front of the net presence that Ottawa doesn't have. But with Matthew Tkachuk, I swear every season there's at least one or two plays that he injures somebody and it's a dirty play. And in this particular situation, I think with Mark Scheifele, I think it was an accident. I watched it over and over and over again. And to me, it doesn't look intentional at all. He looks like he's turning his body away from Mark Scheifele when he's going to make that hit. And I think Scheifele just loses control and just pops his Achilles or tears his Achilles, and he's done. He's done until I don't even see him being able to make it back before the start of next season in December. Mark Scheifele, that really hurt the series for Winnipeg, but I really think it was an accident. I don't think it was an intentional play by Matthew Tkachuk. If it was, he could have done a lot better job of making it look like it was intentional. But, I think it was just a really bad freak accident, like you saw with Jake Muzzin in game 2 against Columbus there with Toronto. It's just, there's been some freak accidents and there's been some heavy hitting in these playoffs. And, unfortunately, I think what happened to Mark Scheifele was an accident. Now, I thought maybe it was NHL player safety going to get involved, but no, if it looked too much like an accident. It couldn't have been. If it was, like intentional, he made it look 100% accidental. So there's no player safety. But I'd like to hear what you guys think. Do you think it was accidental or do you think it was intentional? Let me know. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe on our YouTube videos and on our podcast sites. You can also follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, Facebook. We have a fan page. We also have a fan club. If you want to be added to that, just like our page, and I'm gonna invite you to like the group and to join the group right away. That's where we're going to get our fan base from, and that's where I want to hear you guys. If you think Matthew Tkachuk's hit was dirty, or if it was clean, or if it was an accident, please let me know, because, I get a couple people from work tell me what they think, but I want to hear what other sports fans think, what other people, I want to hear what Calgary Flames think, and I want to hear what the fans from the Winnipeg Jets think. I want to hear everything. So with that, we're going to move on. And we're going to look at the bubble situations for each league. So we're going to go through the NHL, the NBA, and the MLS, and then I'm going to ask a question, and I'm going to answer it at the same time. So we'll start with the ice. Since we're already talking about the ice, let's look at the ice. Now, as you know, no positive tests for the first week of return to play. That's fantastic. That's crazy, because I know I went hard. I was a hard no on bubble situations. And guess what? I was wrong. And I'll admit I was wrong. And I'm good at admitting I'm wrong, because I'm wrong a lot. But, it's so nice to see there's no positive tests. The bubble situations are working, and they're working very well. And the players are taking it seriously. The coaches are taking it seriously. The media is taking it, everyone is taking it seriously. And that's what's making these bubble situations work. Now, let's go to the games. Watching the games on TV is a little weird without fans. If you watch the World Juniors, or if you watch the World Championships, or, you watch Olympic hockey, you know that there are some empty arenas, especially when, let's say in the World Juniors, let's say Slovakia and Denmark are playing. There's not going to be a whole lot of fans unless one of those countries is a host nation. So you have to really kind of look at that and say, okay, it kind of makes sense. But now I'm used to it. Honestly, I can't remember what fans in arenas look like. I'm used to it. And I don't think the players mind, because once they get going and once they play the game, it's, they probably don't notice it because they're too into the game. And I'm finding that myself. As soon as the games start, I'm not focused on who's sitting in the seats. I'm focused on the action on the ice, not the action in the crowd. People go for the action, and people watch on TV for the action on the ice. And the way the NHL has made the arenas look fantastic. They look sleek, and it looks like they're playing in some utopian hockey arena, right? So I think for the NHL, they've done a fantastic job on their bubble situation, and the players, like I said, are all taking it seriously. The referees are obviously in the bubble as well, and they're following protocols. Everyone's following protocols, and it's working out perfect. If there's a COVID test, I'm sure someone or something will get done. But given the track record of all the bubble situations and seeing no positive COVID tests, it's a step in, everything's just looking like it's going to work out, especially during the playoffs, because the playoffs are going to take up a lot of time in both the NHL and the NBA. So honestly, it looks like the perfect scenario in all three. So we're going to move on from the NHL, and we're going to talk about the NBA and its bubble. Now, the NBA is a little bit different, because the NBA is in Orlando. One of the hotspots, or one of the COVID hotspots in the States, is the state of Florida. And especially in Miami-Dade County and in Orlando. So, it got me thinking, oh, geez, are we going to see it? And the NBA has been back for almost a month, or the teams have been in the bubble for almost a month, and no positive tests. This is, honestly, what do you, I'm surprised, shocked, to say the least, about this. I thought okay, maybe the NHL can pull it off because they're in Canada and the COVID rate is much lower in Canada than it is in the States. But the NBA and the MLS, it's in Orlando. Like, it's in Florida, the hot spot in the United States. For sure they're going to get COVID tests. There's 100%. And there hasn't been a single one. For NBA players and NBA fans, that is great. Like, that's like the best case scenario, of course. But I don't think many people thought that would happen when the NBA said they were going to to Orlando. I don't think, I know I didn't. I doubt anyone else did. So now let's talk about the games. And I've watched a couple games, watched a couple Raptors games, and I've watched a couple. I really like the Pelicans. I'm really rooting for them. I don't think they'll get in, but I'm really rooting for them. I've watched a couple of their games too, and it's so, for me, I don't know why, it feels very weird watching the NBA games because the court looks so small at Disney World compared to, the arenas. It just looks so small. I don't know if it's maybe the backdrop that you have when you watch. Like, you have you have the fans sitting right on the floor, right? So I think for me, it's a little bit weird. And then you're watching the fans from each team on the screens that they have. It just, to me, I've never seen a basketball game without fans. So someone could probably make the same connection I made with hockey to basketball, but I don't think it's really, like, I think it's more noticeable than hockey. I don't know, maybe because basketball can be a little bit of a slower pace of a game, or maybe it's because maybe it's just the way where they are. The NHL is playing in an actual stadium, whereas the NBA is in Disney World, in the Wild World of Sports complex. Don't get me wrong, it's a fantastic complex. If you ever have the chance to go to Disney in a post-COVID world, go and see the Wild World of Sports. It's a fantastic facility with so many soccer fields, so many basketball courts. I think they have a couple hockey rinks. They've got it all. So, to me, if you're gonna go see it. But it just looks so different compared to the NHL because they're not using, they're using a regulation court, but they're not using like a full-on arena. So I think maybe that's where it feels a little bit different to me. It's weird. I'm still not used to it. I'm getting there. But I remember the first game I watched, I think it was the Raptors against the Lakers. I was like, this looks super weird. Maybe it's just me. But anyways, we're going to move on. And we're going to move on to the MLS. Now, the MLS has been in the bubble situation for about 2 months. And we're at the final now. It's Orlando, a team I didn't think had any hope in hell of making it to the final, against Portland, a team which I think I said would make it far, but I didn't have them going to the final. If I check my notes, I'll have a better understanding. Let's just check right now since I'm with you guys. I said, let's take a look here. No, I had Portland in the final. So guess what? I know what I'm talking about, I guess, when it comes to MLS. So there you go. So Portland against Orlando City. I like Portland a lot. I'm going to pick Portland over them. But Orlando, they've got a fantastic team. I just, the way they're playing, and they've played some hard opponents. They've played some hard teams. And they've dealt with them all, and they've done a really good job. So hats off to Orlando City. Don't take them lightly when the MLS starts back up for real. But the MLS bubble situation has been a success. No COVID positives. No, nothing. Zero, zilch, nada. So it's just been a great sight to see. And that you're watching soccer on TV. Sometimes you've seen in European soccer, like over in Germany, France, England, all those places, you've seen empty stadiums and you've kind of gotten used to it, like you have with the NHL and like you have with the NBA. and you have it with the MLS too. But even before COVID, there were games held in Europe without soccer fans. There were terrorist attacks, or if there were riots or anything in Europe in any country, they wouldn't be having soccer fans in the stadiums, 100%. So, for me, the bubble situation in the MLS has been nothing but a tremendous success. It's just been the best thing to happen to the MLS since, I don't know. I can't think of the best thing that's happened to the MLS before this. Probably, I guess, since its inception. So it's been nothing but a perfect thing. And this is where we're going to leave off with the bubble situation. And I'm going to ask this question, and then I'm going to provide an answer, but I don't think it's the only one. What's going to happen next season? Or when the MLS starts back up and the teams are allowed to travel, do you think maybe they should go back to the bubble situation? For the MLS, I think 100%. I think the MLS should stick with the bubble situation because you're having hotspots across the U.S. and you're gonna have what you had in Canada and with the Toronto Blue Jays. And we're gonna talk about baseball in a second, but the MLS, the Canadian government is not going to allow MLS teams in. I guarantee you that. If they're not going to let in to the Toronto Blue Jays and other baseball teams, they're not going to let in the MLS. I guarantee you. What about a new basketball season? Well, there's only one Canadian team. So what do? Do you let them travel? Or again, do you do the bubble situation? For teams, for leagues, I think maybe do what the NHL has done and create a couple host cities. So like maybe do one per, or a couple per, maybe do one per division. I know that the NBA doesn't really go through divisions that much anymore. They just prioritize on conference. But they should maybe look into the NHL's return to play and how well the NHL has done with hub cities. I think they should really do that. And the NHL, let's talk about the NHL. Let's finish off with them. December 1st is the new hockey season in 2020. Will there be a second wave in Canada by then? What's the US going to look like, right? So, it's going to be hard for sure, because the NHL, or not the NHL, the NHL will have a fluid, anything, they're going to have a fluid situation. So, should the NHL do a bubble, but do it one per division? So, like, maybe have Toronto in the Atlantic, Metropolitan, maybe do, I don't know, maybe Pittsburgh. In the Pacific, maybe Vancouver or Edmonton or Calgary. And then in the Central, maybe Winnipeg, maybe? Just because Canada has grasp on the virus right now. So, but that could change, right? You never know. That could change. But I think the league should take a strong look at bubble situations for their resuming of their starting of new seasons. It makes no sense to let their players travel. So we're going to move on. And we're going to move on to the MLB and its crazy, insane start. I talked about the sport that I like the most, baseball. And baseball has been insane these past 2 weeks, with multiple teams having multiple COVID positive tests and games being postponed, double headers for months to come. Baseball has gotten off to a very jumpy, very rocky, very hilly start. And there's one person to blame for that. Actually, you know what? There are two people to blame for it. One is absolutely 100%, 1000% Rob Manfred. Rob Manfred is the reason why MLB has gotten off to such a crappy start. And I almost cursed there. I'm so sorry. But I tell you one thing. It's not just Rob Manfred now. The players have some onus in this too. Because there are reports, and I believe these reports, and there's multiple reporters doing this report, that the Miami Marlins, when they got all their COVID tests, they went out and they partied and they went to clubs, went to casinos, they went out to bars and they did stuff. You're not supposed to do that, guys. And St. Louis went to casinos after their games. Guess what? Do people not understand that you're supposed to avoid large groups? Hello? It's coronavirus. That's how that stuff spreads. So there's two people to blame. Well, two groups. One group is Rob Manfred in itself, and the other group is the players. Now, the players have gotten their act together, and so has Rob Manfred. He has cracked down, saying masks at all times for everybody. Umpires, players, coaches, staff, everybody. Mandatory, not worn, suspended. Players go out. You get spotted going out, or you get, if they find out, guess what? Suspended. And it could be fined as well. But guess what? That's how baseball needs to get back on track. Have a little bit of responsibility and have a little bit of consequence if you break the rules. No other league is doing this, as we just mentioned. NHL doing fine. NBA doing fine. MLS doing fine. European soccer leagues, they were allowed to travel. They're doing fine. So, guess what? It's the same has to be done for the MLB. This is why the government of Canada would not let the Toronto Blue Jays play in Toronto. This is why the Toronto Blue Jays have to call Salem Field their home for this year. And I predicted last week. I said to a coworker, "Guess what? Next week you're going to see the stoppage and the suspension of baseball." We may not see that, but guess what? It's hard. Toronto had a weekend off. Washington had a weekend off. Phillies still haven't played because they're playing teams that have COVID, that have so much COVID on them. It's unfair to the Philadelphia, a team who I picked to win. It's unfair to them. They're going to have to play doubleheader upon doubleheader. Yeah, there's 7 innings, but that still takes a toll on somebody. So what the MLB has done in its first couple weeks has been nothing short of rocky. Now, we're going to talk about something else with the MLB and its crazy start. There have teams that I said would finish in the basement. And guess what? They're doing just fine. Detroit Tigers, record above 500. Baltimore Orioles, second in the AL East. What is going on in Baltimore? You know what is going on? They have a really good manager. I can't remember his name. I think he was a bench coach from Minnesota. Rocco Baldelli, I think his name is. I think it's Rocco Baldelli. Maybe I'm wrong. I think I'm wrong. No, that's Minnesota. But anyways, Baltimore, doing really good. They're disciplined. They're not swinging and missing. They're not swinging at everything. Last year, they swung at everything. This year, they're not. They're playing really good, and their pitching has been solid. Another team that's doing surprisingly well, not surprisingly, but the Padres. Padres are doing fantastic. So these teams that supposedly were supposed to be crap are good. And you like to see it. But don't look for that to continue. Hopefully. Everything has to be right in the world. But we've learned during COVID that everything can't be. So guess what? The MLB has had, some surprises so far. And you know what? The biggest surprise this year so far, for me, has been not who's doing better than expected. It's who's doing who's not exceeding, who's below expectations. There are two teams. Number one, Cincinnati Reds. People were saying the Cincinnati Reds should have been one of the best teams in the NL Central. I believe they're dead last in their division. And with the way that Chicago has come out firing, Chicago better get on things, or Cincinnati should get on things really quick, because Chicago's not really turning back. Another team, Tampa Bay. You know, I watched their opening series against Toronto, and then they played, who did they play? They played Baltimore, and they played Atlanta. So tough teams. Toronto's not that tough, and Baltimore's not that tough, but this year they're really tough. Anyways, they're adding 500. They're playing 500 baseball. So what are they doing that's not, that's not sticking, or whatever you want to call it? Well, for one thing, they're not hitting as much or as well as they used to. They're not as clutch. Kevin Cash has to work his magic because they're not performing like they should be. So the Rays and the Reds need to get on a streak, and they need to pull it out of wherever, because they continue, they're not making the playoffs, even though the playoffs have expanded. Another team to look out for, another team to look to improve. Unfortunately, Shohei Ohtani is injured, but the Angels. And I'm sorry, Houston needs to stop winning. I just can't stand Houston. But anyways, so for me, there's two things. Number one, MLB has been rocky, like a ship about to capsize, but luckily they haven't gone overboard, or people haven't gone overboard. And number two, there have been some surprising teams. Will those teams make the playoffs remains to be seen, but with a month away until the trade deadline, if they're close, you bet they're going to make some moves. So we'll see what happens. MLB, you keep watching it. But right now, we're going to move on. And we're going to move on to a new feature. So our new feature that is going to be on every single episode is This Week in Sports History. Now, I'm a big history guy. I loved the subject in school. I plan on teaching it as a subject when I am done with school. And history, you can learn so much from. And I thought, I'm going to put this on the podcast because I think a lot of people are going to like it. And there's going to be stuff from years you didn't think, oh, okay, I remember that. Or, there's going to be some sports history that maybe you forgot, or you maybe didn't even hear of. So we're going to start, and what we're going to do is we're going to go Monday through Friday of every week. We're not going to include the weekend because doing 7 I thought was a little too much. So we're going to do 5. So we're going to go from Monday to Friday. And so we're going to start this week was Monday, August 2nd. And on August 2nd, sorry, not on the Monday, but on August 2nd in 1921, 8 Chicago White Sox were acquitted in the Black Sox scandal. Now, if you don't know what the Black Sox scandal was, it was a game-fixing scandal in which 8 members of the Chicago White Sox were accused of throwing the 1919 World Series against the Cincinnati Reds in exchange for money from a gambling syndicate led by Arnold Rothstein, Aidan Clayton, and Aaron Nelson. Now, they were acquitted in 1921, but the next day, they were all banned from organized baseball for life. It's kind of like Pete Rose, but Pete Rose did it himself. Or actually, no, Pete Rose bet on baseball. It wasn't anything what Pete Rose did, but it's kind of along the same lines. So there's been fixing and cheating in baseball before Pete Rose, and there was after Pete Rose. But hopefully you guys learned something new with that, because I didn't even know what the Black Sox scandal was. I had zero clue. So after August 2nd comes August 3rd. And in August 3rd, 1936, the Summer Olympics were being held. And where were they being held? They were being held in Berlin, Germany, during the height of the Nazi era in Germany. And in 1936, on August 3rd, Jesse Owens won the 100-meter dash Olympic gold in Berlin, one of the 4 that he won in those Olympics, in front of Adolf Hitler, in front of one of the most one of the most hated people in world history for a really good reason, in front of him. One of the most, racist people in history. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word. But he is the most racist person in history. Anyone who says he isn't is wrong. But anyways, Jesse Owens, a African American, won gold in front of the most racist person in the world at that time and of all time. That's insane. I thought that we have to put that on. So it's crazy. And if you should watch the movie. Oh, I can't think of the name of the movie. Anyways, there's a movie about Jesse Owens and his journey to the 1936 Olympics and the racism he had to endure in Berlin in 1936. It's crazy, and I think it's one of the best movies to spot out and point out the racism in Nazi Germany for not just Jewish people, but for any minority. So, moving on. We're going to go on to August 4th. In 2007, Mr. Barry Bonds hits career homer 755 to tie Hank Aaron. Now, obviously, he would hit another one to go to 756. But at that time, Hank Aaron's record was no one came even close to Hank Aaron. And Barry Bonds, whether you believe it or not, or whether you think he did it all himself or not, he tied Hank Aaron, which was hard to do. I bet it was, hitting a round ball with a round bat is hard to do. You ask anybody. Doesn't matter what speed they throw it at. It's hard to do. So on August 5th, in 2006, Warren Moon became the first African-American quarterback to be inducted in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. That's crazy to me. The first African-American quarterback to be elected or to be voted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It was all the way back in 2006. That's crazy. That's insane. It should have happened a lot sooner. There have been many a great African-American quarterbacks. Just African-American players to play football. And, for him to be the first, I bet it was a great sense of pride for him. But he's got to be thinking too, come on, there has to be someone who deserved that honor before him. But anyways, from August 5th, we're going to go to August 6th. And we're going to go all the way back to 1953. On August 6th in 1953, Ted Williams, who played for the Boston Red Sox, he finished his military service from Korea, and he hit 407 and led the league in the abbreviated MLB season. Think of that. A guy who goes off to war for years, comes back with little to no training or little to no preparedness, and leads the league in hitting an average. 407. No one comes close to 407 now. And they play they play and they train for months and weeks and days on end. It goes to show you how special a player Ted Williams was. And finally, we're going to go August 7th, and we're not going too far back. We're going back to 2007, and you guessed it, it's Barry Bonds. And Barry Bonds hits career homer number 756, passing Hank Aaron. I remember I watched that game to look the amount of pride and joy and just utter happiness, whether you liked him or not, on Barry Bonds' face. Because no one's going to come near that record. Again, no one's coming near 756. No one. Sorry, if you think it's going to happen, it may, but not for a while. Baseball pitching has become too good in baseball now, where the home run is seen as it is a negative thing, but home runs are going to be given up, but you're never going to see a player hit 756 of them in their career. Pitchers are just too good nowadays. So that ends this week in sports segment. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys learned a little bit, and I hope you guys maybe even found it cool, found it interesting. I know I did. Doing the research for this was pretty cool. Finding out a lot of things happened in August of, different years. It was hard to pick. It was really hard to pick. So with that, we're going to move on. And guess what? It is now time to guess who is going to get Alex Lafrenière. Now, you guys didn't hear me when I talked about the NHL draft lottery and what an abomination it was this year. The NHL draft lottery was the dumbest thing I have seen from the NHL in many years. And I'll tell you why. We're going to go into a little bit more detail. The NHL, I don't have a problem with 15 teams. That's not the problem I have. The problem I have is A, not knowing which of the 15 teams is going to get Alex Lafrenière, and B, it's just the unknown, and you could have a team like Edmonton, who's now out, or Pittsburgh, who's now out, who has the 7th best record in the league, get a guy who's supposed to be the next Sidney, Connor, Wayne Gretzky type. Do you know how stupid that is? But anyways, here's what I would have done. Keep the 15 teams. That's fine. Do not hold the draft lottery until all 15 teams are known. So, we knew the first 7. Ottawa, New York, or not New York, New Jersey, LA, all those guys, Anaheim, all of them. Wait until the play-in or the qualifiers are over and reseed them. Go by their points percentage. So, someone like Pittsburgh, someone like Edmonton would get a low shot because they had the better season. Oh no, the NHL didn't want to wait. They wanted to screw up royally right now. So what did they do? They give the 7 teams that didn't make the qualifiers, and they said, okay, we're going to do teams A through H. I think it was A, B, C, D, H. And do you know what team won the draft lottery? If you know, please let me know, because I want to know. Maybe if you tell me, you might win something. But do you know which team won the NHL draft lottery? I'm gonna tell you, and the first person who emails or messages us on Facebook after listening to this episode, I'll give you something. I don't know what, but I'll give you something. It was Team G. And do you know what percent Team G had? G in quotation marks. You know what chance they had? 2.5. I would have been a lot better off knowing that, let's say, for example, okay, Team G now looks like it would have been Pittsburgh or Edmonton. I'm still pissed off, and we're going to get to those guys later. But I think I would have had a little bit more respect for the league and respect for Gary Bettman and Bill Daly. Because Bill Daly is Gary Bettman's puppet, let's just face it. I would have had a lot more respect for them if I knew which team was getting Alex Lafrenière. Because I could say, okay, the draft lottery is stupid, which we all know it is, but at least that people have a fear of the unknown. And if anything has revealed that, it is COVID-19. So people have a fear of the unknown. And not knowing who's going to get Alex Lafrenière, yes, we'll find out Monday, but not knowing for, when was, like, a month. We haven't found, like, we don't, like, we've been waiting for a month. So here are the teams that are going to have a chance, a 12.5% chance. They all get an equal chance for some stupid reason. I don't understand. This makes no sense. But here are the teams. So Nashville, Florida, Edmonton, New York, Rangers, Pittsburgh, Winnipeg, and there are still 2 series that have yet to be determined. The way things are going, as I'm recording this, I'm watching Game 4 of Toronto and Columbus, and it's in overtime. So I'm just saying, for the just for the fun of it, Toronto will lose, and they'll enter the lottery. And Minnesota, I like Vancouver too much, and they've proved it after winning back-to-back. So let's say Nashville, Florida, Edmonton, Rangers, Pittsburgh, Jets, Minnesota, Toronto. Out of those teams, half of them should have a 0% chance of getting him. Because A, they don't deserve him, and B, they had too many, they had too good a season. They would not be, like, they wouldn't get him any other regular season. I know this is not a regular season, but still, they should not be allowed to be in it. So those 4 teams are Pittsburgh, Edmonton, Toronto, and Nashville. Nashville is like an iffy, but Edmonton, Toronto, and Pittsburgh 100% do not deserve to be in this. If Montreal lost to Pittsburgh and Montreal was in it, I'd say Montreal deserves it. Montreal should be in this. But Toronto, Edmonton, Pittsburgh absolutely do not need to be in this. If they go on and beat Columbus, and Columbus enters, Columbus is even a team where you say they shouldn't be in it either. But it is what it is. So I just think, I'm going to tell you who I think deserves a player like Alex Lafrenière. And that team, to me, there are 2 teams out of the teams that qualify. The first one's Florida. Alex Lafrenière could do wonders in Florida. And the second one is Winnipeg. And I'll tell you why Winnipeg. Winnipeg could get, they could get the best thing ever out of losing to Calgary. They could get an elite scoring winger who could go with Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele, or even Kyle Connor. You can put Kyle Connor on Winnipeg's first line. Or you can put Alex Lafrenière on the second line for his first. I wouldn't do that. But imagine a line of Mark Scheifele, Patrick Laine, and Alex Lafrenière. That would be crazy. I would love that, but it may not happen. Florida, he could do wonders for Florida. He can make Florida, like, any team he goes to automatically becomes a cup favorite. Just like with Edmonton with Connor McDavid. You know, these guys are gonna automatically make them better. So hopefully I'm rooting for Edmonton, or not Edmonton. I'm rooting that Edmonton doesn't get him. I'm rooting for either Florida or Winnipeg. If I had to see a Canadian team get him, Winnipeg would be my choice. If Vancouver loses their series and Vancouver's in there, Vancouver beats out Winnipeg, in my opinion. Because could you imagine Brock Besser, Elias Pettersson, Quinn Hughes, and Alex Lafrenière on a power play unit? Whew. That would be some high-powered power play offense. So it could happen. You never know. But the final point on the draft and the question I'll pose, do you think, and I'll give you my 2 cents, do you think the NHL will rig the draft lottery? And do you think they'll put Lafrenière in a team, in a market, just for like a price? Do you think they'll rig the draft somehow, or the lottery somehow? People are saying that Edmonton rigged the draft lottery when Connor McDavid was up for his draft. Same thing with Austin Matthews and the Toronto Maple Leafs. With Toronto, I say no, but with Edmonton, it's plausible. So will the NHL do that again? Let's say a team like Edmonton, Pittsburgh, Toronto win. And now there's a 25% chance that he goes to Edmonton or Pittsburgh. That he goes to a 5 seed. Imagine that. That's insane. Think about that for a second. A team with Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and Alex Lafrenière on one line. Do you know how scary that would be? Or think of it this way. Crosby, Malkin, Lafrenière. Or Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, and Alex Lafrenière. Imagine that. I would be done with watching. You know what? If that happens, I may stop watching the NHL because it's an unfair process. You got teams that win, like in a regular season, wouldn't have a chance at him. All of a sudden they do. It makes no sense. And if the NHL has a brain, they will never make this mistake again. But we'll see what happens. So with that, we're going to say goodbye for this episode. We're going to let everything I said sink in. And we're going to talk about who won the draft next episode. And I'm going to tell you, whoever wins, and if it's someone that doesn't deserve him, there are some teams that have a neutral option. Like if they win, I won't be upset, but I won't be happy for them either. So we're going to talk about who won for sure. So for this episode though, we're done. We're done talking about everything. I want to thank you guys for listening. Again, please, I'm on my hands and knees begging. Please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We have an email, the hometurfpodcast@gmail.com. Email us. If you have suggestions for shows, suggestions on what I should talk about, if you want to tell me this podcast is awesome or you want to tell me that you don't like it, I want to hear from you, and what you would do to improve it. Please follow us. Follow us on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're posting the podcast on there. I finally figured out how to do that. So please, I'm begging you. Because without you guys, without listeners, again, it's all going to be what I want to talk about. And some people don't like that. And some people don't like listening to me talk. That's fine. I understand that. But just follow us. We'll have some contests. We'll do some stuff. We'll have fan engagement. But we need to do that when you guys need to follow us on social media. So please. And please wear a mask. I don't know how many times I have to say this. Wear a mask, be safe, follow social distancing guidelines, and just please, no one needs to die from this anymore. It's getting scary. So we're going to sign off with that. Have a great weekend or great week, or just have a great day whenever you're listening to us. We'll talk to you next week. In the meantime, enjoy watching the playoffs. Hockey, basketball, enjoy watching baseball. Football is coming back. You're going to watch that. Please just enjoy sports and stay inside, or just if you have to go outside, be safe and be social distant about it. Okay? So, thank you so much again for listening. We'll talk to you next week. And keep on watching sports. Don't stop. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.